Hello, Carl here with Sustainability Theory News. Today we're going to do a deep dive into elderberries, which can be a pretty great permaculture plant. It is perennial, comes back year after year. It's a shrub. It can produce berries in its first year, however, you're going to see most of the berries after year 3 or 4. They talk about between 10 and 15 pounds of berries per mature bush. That's a lot. And it's very easy to propagate. You can take a cutting, just a cutting of the above ground growth, a stick about 6 inches long, and stick it in the ground and it'll start to root. You can stick it in a cup of water, it'll start to grow roots. It's a very easily rooted plant from clones and cuttings. Now, of course, no plant is perfect. I have several different articles I'll be showing you in a second. First up, it's not entirely edible, certainly not raw. Some people say it's just astringent and bitter when it's raw. Other people say it'll cause stomach aches. So it's really best for cooking. A lot of people like making wines out of it or just adding it to grapes to add a little bit of different flavor to the wine. People say they love making jams and pies out of it. It has a slightly bitter taste when raw, but when you cook it or process it, it becomes a bit sweeter, especially if you add some sugars. Now there are several different varieties. The black elderberry, which I'll show you an article in a second, is shown to have many different antiviral properties, so it's a good medicinal plant for your permaculture garden as well. You want to have a good site selection. They want fast-growing acidic soils, slightly acidic soils, and they prefer to be add some compost every year because they have very shallow roots, which means they'll go well next to deep-rooted plants or trees. Now, they want to set the shrub 6 to 10 feet apart. They say it'll reach its full height in about the first year, and then it'll start to grow wider after that. And let's go to the next article here. Talks a little bit about the difference between red and black elderberries, obtaining elderberry trees, planting them. Of course, they are like weeds. They grow really quick. They don't need really great conditions. However, the previous article said it's a myth that they can grow in clay-filled soils. They really do like well-drained soils. That's from my experience as well. All right, again, there's going to be all these pages will be linked in the description so you can read more about it. We're at Healthy Holistic Living, Elderberry Extract Nature's Tamiflu. Now, pictured here is elderberry jam, and they talk about several medical studies, some with a commercial product, sambucol, which I'll link to in the description. This is some Amazon page linked from this site, so it may be an affiliate link for this page. But it has been shown effective in many different viruses, specifically influenza in this study. And they've checked influenza, herpes simplex. At the bottom of this article, they talk about how it's currently studied for its effectiveness in HIV. Now, they talk about it being an ancient panacea, which is sort of a silver bullet that can help with many different disorders. Of course, I'm not a doctor, and if you do want to use it for medical purposes, you're going to want to consult your physician. Now, making a jam or an extract can be a little bit difficult. Here we have a recipe for a simple syrup, and some of the studies do show using a syrup, and in fact, this sambucol calls itself a syrup, and they have a sugar-free variety, so I don't think it's an alcohol or glycerin-based extraction, which otherwise known as a tincture. However, some people do like to use elderberry to make tinctures for their medicine. But considering it's not the best plant to eat raw or the best berry to eat raw, and most tinctures are uncooked, I may avoid that personally because there are cyanide-based poisons within it which are neutralized when cooking. Now, this simple elderberry syrup, you cook it for about 30 minutes with some water, and then as it cools down to room temperature, then you'll add some honey as a sweetener. The reason you want to cool to room temperature is you don't want to hurt any of the nice beneficial compounds within the honey. And it could be a pretty effective treatment for flu. The studies in this article talked about how it shortens the duration by on average of 4 days earlier, the duration of flu-like symptoms. Lastly, I'll link to this Quora article, What Does Elderberry Taste Like? Yeah, they talk about don't eating them raw, and she talks about adding a little bit of lemon, drinking elderberry juice with a little bit of lemon and sugar. She talks about how it's very complementary, having lemon into it, and it's also a pH indicator, elderberries, so it'll change color in the presence of an acid or a base. Of course, that might not be too pertinent to you unless you're doing chemistry and you don't have any pH indicators laying around, but it can add a bit of color to all sorts of different dishes, and it might add a different color if you have a more basic or alkaline dish that you're adding it to. Oh, you know what? One last tip. Birds love elderberries. They will eat them when they're ripe, which is around August to September in the northern hemisphere. And they talk about a harvesting tip of just clipping off the entire berry cluster and stripping them off with your hands. Um, this looks like it's more earlier in the ripening season, around August, because it has some of these more lightly colored unripe berries as well. And the unripe berries are not very palatable at all, especially even when compared to the ripe berries. All right, again, links for all these articles will be in the description. If you'd like to see more news headlines like this, subscribe to my channel. Have a great day.